Welcome back. Next up, we have a very exciting panel talking about something every event planner have been trying to solve when things are being swiftly pushed online, which is engagement. Firstly, Tim is a global conference speaker with multiple awards under his belt. As a leading change speaker, he talks about transformation, innovation, and motivation. Having led departments and managed teams for over 19 years at various organizations in Asia Pacific, Tim has a complete understanding of corporate culture. He has solved many of the challenges all corporates face and speaks the language of your people. Thanks to corporate operational management experience and several speaking awards, he is able to connect with his audience in an impactful, results-oriented, and relevant way. Secondly, we have David Simpson. As a knowledgeable training professional with over 20 years of experience in team building, David is devoted to sharing the benefits with the rest of the world. David is a qualified psychological health clinician and originally worked with divided communities in Northern Ireland and professionals in the corporate wellness arena in Asia. This experience in the corporate field naturally led to the co-founding of Team Building Asia in 2002. David has been delivering and facilitating team building events ever since and has spoken at several events and conferences. Last but not least on the panel, we have David Fotheringham, a world-class lead facilitator who brings passion and professionalism to every opportunity to connect. David settled in Asia for the last 20 years, 5 years in Hong Kong and 10 years in Singapore. David is passionate about the power of team building to bring about change to organizations in the region. David loves to wow the crowd. He is one of the best team building activity deliverers in the industry, enthusiasts and excites all individuals on an event so that they work as a team. He also drives the marketing and delivery of Catalyst events in the Singapore market. Together, the panelists will discuss on the topic, the engagement solution, how to solve the biggest problem for online and hybrid events. Research has shown that the number one challenge that online event organizers are facing is engagement. And the second one is the lack of tech knowledge. Together, these make up over 50% of the biggest frustrations event planners need to overcome. So how do you increase engagement in a virtual environment? That's exactly what our 3 online event engagement experts are going to talk about in this session. They are going to cover how to increase the value of your pitch, effective interaction, engagement, and participation techniques for live, online, and hybrid events. How to use practical engagement strategies as a key differentiator at your event. Solutions that are already being implemented by our clients and that you will be able to implement as of today. Join their discussion to learn how to increase the value of any event. Catalyst Global, please.
Hello and welcome to this important session, the engagement solution. My name is Tim Wade and I'm an event speaker, a keynote speaker, and I speak at virtual, online and hybrid events, as well as live events when they happen. And I speak about leading change, and I get asked to facilitate discussions in online events and meetings too. And as the title of this session suggests, we have solutions for you, engagement solutions. And with me on the screen just over there is David Simpson. He's the co-founder and director of learning and development of Team Building Asia. And he's been living in Hong Kong for over 23 years. David's originally from Northern Ireland, where he worked with politically divided backgrounds and sought to help integrate those communities. This provided David with some great insights towards the advantages of team building, which he continues to use today. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Tim.
And we also have right next to me here, David Fotheringham. We have 2 Davids. My name should be David, but it isn't.
Bonus.
Yes, so I could just say David, randomly somebody will say something. David Fotheringham stepped out of Hong Kong for 5 minutes and the British gave it back to China. Now that was back in, 97, presumably. And now he's in Singapore running the team building organization Asia Ability, and they've got offices in Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. He's been delivering corporate training and events in Asia for the last 20 years. So you guys have both been for the best part of 20 plus years. Yeah, that's amazing. Now, before that, you were in the fitness industry.
You can hardly tell now. I know. That was a long time ago.
Well, I didn't want to say anything, but yeah. So you were doing that. Now that's how. Well, I mean, one of the things you learned by doing that was one of the keys to success, I guess, in the fitness industry, but also weirdly enough in the events industry and running these sorts of things, was not just understanding the mechanics of doing an exercise or the mechanics of how to get fit, but also the key ingredients of effective motivation and facilitation. And you did say, I mean, we were having a chat the other day, and you were saying that most leaders tend to focus on the mechanics when it comes to team building as well.
Or just the sort of the how-to of this step by step, here's the theory, here's the 3 things you should do to make, an effective team, rather than giving people an experience that drives them so that it's coming from inside.
Yeah.
And what the kind of a team experience can do is have that come from the inside. Have it be your own personal motivation, your own personal drive, and your own personal learning to move forward and do something different, not just because someone says it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, so it's not like a sticker up on the wall that says, here's what you need to do to have an effective team. You need that motivation, that why, and also that team engagement, I suppose, being facilitated in some way. That makes a big difference?
Absolutely. So you're kind of guided through that. You're not just left to your own devices to kind of hope you find something that works. Yeah. And a good bit of guidance, good facilitation, steers you on the right course and steers you to actually make the right connections and the right discoveries from your own experience as well. You could have a great experience but not actually process any learning from it.
Yep.
And the kind of the right facilitation is what actually brings the learning through.
Brilliant. So what we're really going to talk about in this session is, as the title suggests, the engagement solution. And you were also mentioning that if you're going to run an event, in fact, we're talking about this a little bit earlier, event organizers want to extract, and the people who are engaging event organizers want to extract the maximum value out of every dollar invested in that event. And to do that, on the other side of the screen in a virtual event or in the audience in a live event, we need what's being said on the stage or on the screen to really impact and land with the audience. So how do we do that? I mean, what we're looking at is solving the number one problem, because there's a lot of research and studies, and you've got some studies as well, David over there. David over there. But yeah, so the number one problem or the number one challenge of live, online, and hybrid events seems to be what? What does the research suggest, Mr. Simpson?
So what we've seen various surveys, chambers across Asia, particularly the British Chamber, have asked all their members what the biggest challenge has been. And the number one thing that's coming out is engagement. We're consistently asked for programs and activities that are going to ensure that there's engagement, particularly in a remote setting, particularly if you're working from home. You've got many distractions around you. Your own children may not be at school and also doing virtual classes as well. So there's lots of opportunities to disengage, get distracted by emails coming in, get distracted by your phone and text messages. So we've had to get very creative in looking at activities that can be run successfully that require 100% engagement.
Yeah, there were some online surveys as well that were saying that the number one was engagement, the number two was facilitation of the actual event, and the number three was readiness. What's readiness?
So the readiness being really where that group and where those clients are at in terms of their familiarity and their experience and their ability to work in that virtual space. So some teams where you are already having a sort of regional team and people are spread and you've been doing virtual meetings for years perhaps, their readiness level can be so much higher.
Right.
And they can just step in and run with it. And it's actually very easy for them to extract more value from any of the virtual meetings they have. Some, the whole current situation has come as a complete shock and they're left struggling and wondering, how do we cope with this? And even the most basic functions of being able to operate in a virtual platform is kind of a bit beyond them. Yeah. And so that, in that case, the readiness level is much lower, and the ability to make some kind of a virtual meeting, discussion, sharing, information download, all of these struggle because they're just not ready.
Yeah. And I guess this is a great example of I guess people assuming that everybody knows exactly what they know when it comes to being online. So if I'm proficient, I assume everybody else by now is as proficient as me. But the truth is that in our audience, we've got people at various levels of readiness sometimes, depending on whether you've got a wider audience or a smaller audience. So how do we get them ready? If I'm running an event for a couple of thousand people or even half a dozen people, how do we ensure that they're ready? What's a great way to do that?
So, I mean, that's for me, that's where the kind of interactive team experience comes in.
Right.
It's upskilling people through a gamified experience that actually prepares them to be more adept and more interactive when they're just working in that virtual platform. David knows exactly all about that, where you're kind of compelling people, you're forcing them to reach through the screen and interact more with each other, and in the process get more comfortable, get more familiar with how to do that on a regular basis, and learn the tricks and the tips to improve that communication and improve that collaboration in that space.
Okay, so that kind of in one event or in one activity brings in the readiness, gets people up to speed, because as they're involved in this experience, that's going to be revealed pretty quickly, and then help can be assisted. And then the second part is it's starting to get people engaged already, which was the number one challenge that David was sharing, as well as what we're seeing online as being the number one problem that people are having. So what give me an example of a game, of a gamified experience that you're talking about.
What do you think, David?
I think, one of the biggest challenges, building on what David said, is you can't really train people to work in a remote setting by saying, okay, everybody, don't talk at once. And if someone does talk, don't interrupt them, and then everybody talks. You know how it is when you're face to face. Someone says something, it sparks an idea in your head, and then all of a sudden you get a flurry of ideas. You can't literally arrange a meeting and say, okay, everybody, we're now going to train you how not to talk everybody at once. You have to experience it. And we have a few activities, one that's very entry level, that's a lot of fun, has a sense of purpose to it. We've designed it because people are unable to travel. So we've got an activity called Race Around the World, which really gets people excited because they're like, well, I haven't traveled for the last 7 months. I haven't been on a plane. I haven't left Singapore, I haven't left Hong Kong. And this activity challenges them to work at teams to make their way across the world, starting in North America. And of course, to get the engagement piece, we fragmented the information across the different team members. So you have someone who is what we call an explorer. So they have to enter all the answers, and they have guides, which are the other team members that have all the information. So immediately, you can't do it yourself. You are, as David would say, compelled to work together because you haven't got all the pieces of information. And through that experience, and particularly in the debriefing, people realize they need to finesse their communication. Because if everybody's speaking at once, the timer's ticking away, and they're not going to make their way around the world quick enough. So when we go to the debrief, they're usually very forthright in coming up with, well, everybody was speaking at the same time, and some people weren't speaking up because they had the information. And with enough practice, as they go through with continuous learning, they're like, oh, right, when we got to South America, we realized that we should wait until we've got all the information, make sure we've heard from everybody, and then launch the task. So that's one of the ways that we can get people to experience the benefits of finessing communication, but taking them out of their normal working environment so they can zoom out and see it in a different light. And then hopefully moving forward, those skills are ingrained. So the next remote team building session or the next remote conference or call that they have, they know, right, I should sit back, listen to the person that shared the information, and then wait my turn to share. And the more they repeat that, the more they finesse it, the more improved their communication is going to get.
I don't know about you, David. I love the fact when I facilitate these events, you can literally see the transformation happening in front of your eyes. It's in this game, there are 6 continents. When teams set off on the first continent, all the lack of readiness is usually pretty apparent, and they have no idea where they're working, how to interact better, how to get the results. By the time they reach the last continent, they're firing on all cylinders. It's like they've been doing this virtual teaming for years, for a lifetime, and it's just speeded up the readiness, preparation, no end. They kind of get from zero to hero.
Yeah.
Overnight, almost.
And I guess the main difference is, like we kind of said at the beginning, it's not like saying you need to do this, and this, because most people listening will go, yeah, I do that. It's like when you get on a plane and they go, here's all the safety instructions.
Yeah.
You go, yeah, I know what they all are. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. And so you just like switch off. But when you're in the game, and so I got to experience some of the games in the booth. So if you haven't been to the booth, go check out the booth. But I got to experience some of these games in the booth, and in this particular one, what's really interesting is that as a participant, you really need to listen to what the person is saying on the other end of the screen to then apply it. And as an event organizer, that's exactly what we want. We want the keynote speaker to be suggesting something, and then the audience takes some sort of action. And we want them to be listening, but we want them to be engaged, and we want them to implement. And I think this game is a fantastic example of learning all of that and creating those experiential hooks, rather than just saying, I know how to do this. It's to actually get them doing it.
Yeah,
so
less
really
distant from it. You feel more compelled to actually listen closely and take some action based on what's being shared on screen. Do we have some video of this?
Yeah, should we cut to the video of this one?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So, I mean, you can see how interactive and engaging it is and how it looks on the screen. It's pretty cool. And you're using technology that is not interfering with any of the event technology as well. It's all browser-based.
The game itself, the Race Around the World, runs on an app which anyone can download on an Apple or Android phone, and it's simple to use, easy to download, and easy to play.
So we actually are encouraging them to be using their phone while the event's happening. But
I know, the cardinal sin.
Yeah, but in a really positive way. And of course, for engagement techniques, sometimes we're going to be using those the phones anyway. So it's a really good one for that too. Brilliant. So we did talk a little bit about why games, but does it need to be games? I mean, why are games so effective at doing things so quickly and getting that learning so quick? David?
I think the best way is because it's activity based. We all love playing games. It's really important for different groups that they understand the purpose. Because for some people, the idea of great games springs up, oh great, this is going to be fun. For other people, they're like, I'm very busy, I've got calls back to back, and I don't see the benefit of this game. So you really do have to address what the benefits are going to be. One of the biggest areas is looking at what the outcomes will be. So again, with Race Around the World, it really is that finessing your communication, looking at ways that people can interact in a remote setting much better. How we achieve that through those ways are gamification techniques. So as David talked there, moving through the different continents, that's like going through levels. The reason that Candy Crush is such an addictive game is because of levels. So we have different levels that are in the game. The other factor that works really well is the timer. So they have timed tasks. So they are really, called to action to actually do this task and run through it. And the fact is, they can be distracted by their phone. The fact that they're on the phone is a great opportunity, because then they're engaging with technology that would normally distract them. So we were able to do some twists and turns, which is another part of the gamification process as well. So you can call them games, call them activities, but really it's something that's going to displace them a little bit from their day-to-day work. Give them a chance for their brain to dissipate, try out something else. But the real skill comes in linking that activity to make it meaningful to the day-to-day work. And through the facilitation, getting them to be forthright in what has worked well for them in stages of, as we progress through the game, but also bringing up some of those blind spots. Recently did Race Around the World with a group that's in totally different places around the world. And one person admitted that, yeah, I'm that type of person. When I hear someone speaking, I immediately think of an idea and blurt it out. And I need to step back from that. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's something they need to work at. But because they've had that transformation, that experience, and admitted it in front of other people, they can then have the opportunity to keep working on it. A bit like going to the gym, it's something that you keep working at, make a commitment at, and then hopefully over a period of time, you realize that behavior that you may not have seen before, and ultimately it's just going to make you a better communicator.
Very nice. And with regards to the remote working arrangements that people have at the moment, are there any unique issues that have arisen from that with regards to that team events can address?
Well, I think what we take for granted in terms of how people interact in a normal sort of face-to-face setting just isn't there anymore. And actually, for some teams, the sort of rate of interaction between the team members is so much less. So they literally feel themselves drifting away from the counterparts, and there's no casual interaction that you would have from passing someone's desk.
Yeah.
You literally, it's all very structured. We're only meeting that one time a week, or sometimes it's once every 2 weeks. Teams that are actually, it's interesting to see, back to the readiness, teams who are ready are often having a much more regular rhythm of meeting, even meeting online, and then it becomes much more fluid and natural. But one of the unique challenges is that when it's not so fluid, you really have to kind of build back the communication, build back the interaction, and let it be more relaxed. Let it be more personal, because somehow I think when we put people in that virtual setting, it feels a bit stilted, it feels a bit formal or unnatural, and they don't just relax into kind of being themselves and being able to chat and connect as they would do if they were just passing my colleague by their passing the desk, and we have a quick 1 minute banter about life and then just carry on. That kind of relationship building connection just isn't there, and you're left with a formal ideas, information download, kind of very business focused only interface on that virtual platform. So I think part of what we're doing is trying to release the freedom and the comfort level of just being able to have more personal interactions in the virtual world.
Yeah, and the other thing I suppose is the energy side of it. It's like you were saying, if people are withdrawing in a sense, or concerned about their background or environment or whatever it is, and they can't have that quick conversation with the person sitting next to them at a table, that the energy level can sometimes come down. And when you're running an event, one of the most important things is to create a sense of energy, a sense of momentum, a sense of activity, a sense of immersion, a sense of attraction that's happening as well. And when I'm facilitating events on a live stage, one of the reasons why I'm asked to come in is because I bring that energy in. And I've seen you live in, I think I've seen you live in Birmingham, as well as Singapore, as well as Bali.
I remember.
I'm the audience member, and I've seen you do that as well, bringing that in live. And that's so how do you translate that energy side into, I mean, it sounds like these games are helping facilitate that energy and immersing people into the program.
Yeah.
Because it's about energy management when it comes down to events. We can lose people and engagement can come down if the energy seems to come down.
Absolutely. Again, I'd love to know, because I think there is a little difference in the different regions. And again, to hear from David on this, but I know, and you know, often the natural default for a lot of groups, actually, and in Singapore, I find this a lot, people will be more reserved at first in terms of how sort of much energy they're putting into the interactions on screen. And that's one of the sort of shifts that we see when an event is managed right, that we are encouraging them to, again, loosen up and put more energy into it, put more of themselves into it, start to connect beyond where the limits of the screen are. And actually, you know, that creates a lot more sort of energy. Yeah, they're playing. They're really interacting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I notice, for example, when we're in Malaysia, sometimes it doesn't take very much at all, and people will just jump into that and really play a lot quicker and be ready to kind of go for it. You know.
I should probably just mention. So you run Asia Ability, which looks after Singapore,
Malaysia and Thailand.
And David runs Team Building Asia, which looks after Hong Kong and China. But you're all part of a global network that produces these events for produces these activities and events called Catalyst Global.
Yeah.
So what's the situation over in what have you noticed culturally and with regards to working in Hong Kong and China and different regions?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been ongoing learning. As you know, I've been in Hong Kong 23 years. I have found working with groups and particularly being educated with the purchasers, the event organizers, is there's a great culture of lifelong learning in Hong Kong. It seems that everybody, maybe it's because they're very good at learning different languages and they've got different languages to learn. That's instilled at a very young age. So they always have to have a sense of purpose and connected to that lifelong learning. So I find when I'm doing activities, I need to get that up front. As Dave talked there, if people are working from home, as you know, the flats in Hong Kong are quite small. People might not want to give too much of themselves by having the camera on, because then people can be seeing what's going on in their flat, what size their flat is, all these things that we can benchmark ourselves against. But if you explain the purpose of putting the camera on is to get more engagement, so you can actually see the reactions of other people. It's a real opportunity. Previously, before, if we were just on phone calls and we weren't seeing the group or we're face to face, you do get to see different sides of people, but also really locks it back in that the purpose of putting the camera on is so you can see the reactions of other people, increases engagement. The other factor is speaking up and speaking out. In Hong Kong is not as assertive as maybe other regions that we've worked in. And that comes down to the design of the activity. As I said, if you can put in elements of gamification where there's a timer and someone says, look, I know you've got this piece of information, what is it? And the person's almost said, right, I've got permission here, this is what it is, and this is how it's come across. So it's actually helping that person assert themselves and get that information across, particularly valuable in a remote setting. I mean, there's nothing worse when someone says, are there any questions about what we just talked about? and the room goes entirely silent. So again, it's bringing that energy up and saying, right, everyone has pieces of information. Let's nominate, let's not work. Some things do translate really well. For example, when you're in a room and you want to show appreciation, it's very easy. You can cheer or you can give a round of applause. However, if you're in a remote setting and normally the mic is mute because you might be working with 100 to 200 people, a very simple wave or using the emoji reactions on the platform does really well. And we've been using this recently, particularly when people are talking in a debrief. Well, that was great, locking in the reinforcing part. Can everyone show their appreciation and they give a big two-hand wave? That person feels valued, that the contributions come across. It's unique, and it does get that energy level up again because people are challenged or compelled or, in a sense, forced to interact with what's actually happening. And if you're interacting, you've got that energy and you've got that engagement.
Speed, you did mention about a Q&A. We do have Q&A after this, so if you've got any questions, please pop it in the chat box, the Q&A box, and we will get to that a little bit later. So you've got a game that actually addresses some of these cultural issues of whether you have some people in your audience that are quiet or some people in your audience that are a lot more playful, I suppose. I mean, I've spoken all across the world, and one of the places that I spoke was in Japan. And some people were saying, so what are you going to do in the event? I'm going to do this and this and this, and they're going to be participating in all of that sort of way, and they're going to be running across the stage. And they're like folding their arms, going, "Yeah, but this is Japan." And I go, "I know, but I will create something which gives them permission to play, and you watch, they will play." And they always do. And so it's creating the permission to play sometimes. And so what's great about these games is it creates that permission to play. What's the game that you would use if that was a particular challenge and you'd like to involve people a little bit more in that permission?
But when you say, and particularly when you focus on communication, the thing that comes to mind for me is the infinite loop online, because I mean, communication kind of permeates all of the events, and that's where the engagement and the interaction comes from, being clear, being effective in how you communicate. But I think nowhere does it come out as much as in the infinite loop, which it kind of feels a little bit like a very high-tech escape room type of feel. You know, you're rescuing John Doe from his virtual prison on a spaceship. It's been developed by one of our Catalyst partners with a video game developer, so it feels almost like you are immersed in a video game, but it's designed as a purpose-built learning activity with a focus on communication. So, and this is again where we're kind of compelling the really effective interaction between participants. One member of that team is in their sort of in the room of the spaceship, staring at a puzzle to solve, while the rest of the team members have potential solutions in front of them, but they don't see what that one other person is seeing. It all comes down to, can you actually explain what you see? Can you describe it in a way that I can understand? Not in a way that's just good for me, but actually trying to think, what are you going to understand? And if I'm the person listening, am I just hearing what I want to hear and thinking what I want to think about what they're saying, or am I trying to put myself into that other person's shoes and really kind of flesh out what they are describing, so we know we're on the same page? And that's so often the issue when you're communicating, is it's a bit one-sided. You think you've understood, or you think the other person's understood, but here we're doing it again, race against time, as David was mentioning. That seems to come up everywhere, the idea that you're against the clock, and the competition's fierce. Somehow in all of that, as it often is in the real world as well, you don't have all the time in the world to get things done. So we need to find an understanding quickly.
Yep.
And make sure we're on the same page. And I think the infinite loop online does that beautifully. And it's actually an event that's been transformed. It's a good example of where we had an event that was actually a virtual reality event in the real world, and it's literally been recrafted and redesigned specifically to work in a completely virtual format.
Which means that particular game can be live, can be online, or can be hybrid.
It can be hybrid as well. So you can combine where you have some of the team members dialing in remote, some people on site in a location.
I mean, as somebody who's asked to come in and speak at events, having a link back to an activity like that, or if I'm facilitating a whole conference, being able to link back to an activity that they went through like that with after there'd been a couple of speakers, turn to the person next to you or go to a breakout room, have a bit of a chat with your group about what did you hear from that session, how are you going to implement it. Remember, you played Infinite Loop and it was all about discussing what you learned, what are you going to apply, finding the clues. Go and discuss with your group, what are the clues from what those speakers just spoke about that we can apply back at work or back in our business. And they offer these amazing hooks, that we can hang the event on.
Yeah.
And I just find them absolutely priceless. And I've played this game, the live version. We played that, right? The one with the Oculus.
With the goggles.
Yeah, the goggles.
Oculus Go.
And then I've also played the
online
one, which you can play at the booth as well. So if you haven't been to the booth, a lot of you have already played
We have
it.
a demo.
Yeah, the demo version's at the booth, right?
Yep.
So go check it out. But it's very cool because what's great is you're literally playing a game, but it's all about listening skills, communication skills, time against the clock, extracting the information that you need from the speaker, which is what we want from an event, right? Extract the information to be able to apply it to get a great solution.
I'm just saying, going back to with a conversation before about why do games work, I think that's a great example of how you have the balance. Participants will love you for the excitement and the fun of the game that you play when you're in the Infinite Loop. The business owner or the organizer will love you for the return you're getting, the learning and the application from what's actually happened in the event. That's very real world takeaway from that as well.
Yep.
So you kind of balance them both.
Well, so, and I absolutely agree with that. I think it's one of those. It sounds like a magic pill that's covering a lot of issues in the event, which is really good. David, what have you noticed or seen or experienced that hasn't worked? You've been doing this for years and years, and what have you noticed hasn't worked?
Well, that's a great question. When we were starting this, obviously for us in February, this came along that live events looked like they were going to just stop completely. We needed to transform into these virtual activities. We wanted something that wasn't just static, trying to be digital, or something trying to be virtual. What is actually going to work in a real virtual setting? And going back to the Infinite Loop, if you had those Oculus goggles, obviously they're going to be a bit of a challenge with people sharing them as we move back to more hybrid events where we can do Infinite Loop online and live. It's about making sure it's sanitary as you change the goggles over. When we transformed into the online version, obviously with the Oculus, as you move, that moves the spaceship as well. With this, you've got cursors on the floor to move through the room. And we're able to put in the whole idea that you can't share the screen when you're doing this on a platform. So we have to disable the screen sharing. So for example, when you're doing it in a live setting, you can't just take the Oculus headset off and give it to another team member. You have to describe what you see in the room. So to keep that element of the gamification in a virtual setting, we have to disable the screen sharing. And we don't always get it right. We realized then people were able to use the chat function and put the codes and everything that they were seeing in the room in the chat function. So then we have to disable the chat function. So we've had the opportunity over the last 7 months to learn from those and just enhance and improve each time we go through it. I think we've got a really solid activity at the moment. We also had to look at ways that we could have all the teams engaged in the same room. It's very easy with a physical product, but when you're doing it online, we have to use team codes instead of team names. Another activity that we were able to run, which is called Peak Performance, which is a simulation of climbing Everest. When that first came out as a live event, we were very excited because it was designed by gamification experts, it was designed by team builders, and actually by people who have climbed Everest. And the combination of those three together actually presented a fabulous game. The biggest thing about it again was you didn't have the facilitator saying day one, it's a 20-day simulation, each day runs for 2 minutes. You don't have the facilitator saying day one is over, everybody hand in your information, okay, now we're ready to go to day two. Because it was all done electronically, it just automatically went to day two and they could submit their information online. We were able to transform that into a virtual setting very easily because it was a web-based program. So teams sitting at home or working from home get a link to the master game screen, and then they get a link to what was previously on an iPad, but now we've put that web-based. So they can see those two screens very easily. This is a little bit more complicated, so they can share the screens. But one of the challenges we find is there's a lot of information that they need to read. In a live setting, you can give them that information, you can go around and check that teams understand. And we took a little bit of a risk with this one, where we send the information in advance. So it's now out there, but I think it'd be very difficult to try and copy this game because it is so sophisticated and it is run as an online version. But simply, taking that fear of getting that information out there, compelling people to read it beforehand. So we have to work very closely with the event organizers to make sure people read that booklet and the information so they know the roles that are required to manage the weather, to manage the points, to manage the clients. But the advantage of that is we can open up the virtual conference 30 minutes before time has to start. So people know they should at least be ready 15 minutes beforehand, check their cameras on, check that everything's working, close down all their other applications, and use that 15 minutes to read the information. Of course, not everybody reads information, so then we produce 2 tutorial videos, and we can show those tutorial videos on repeat. They're only 2 and 3 minutes long. So every 5 minutes, they're watching this video, they're getting the information, they're ready. So when we start the program, they're good to go. So there's a lot we've learned. A big way to take the opportunity of, I wouldn't say dead air, but silence in a program where people have to read, is to send them that information first. So we send them through a very simple how to play guide. Your program will be in 2 weeks' time. Make sure you've got all this information, all that's ready. If it's an app you need to download, make sure that you get on the store and make sure you can download that. And it's really helped. It's all about relationships. It's really helped solidify those relationships with event organizers because they can see the amount of preparation that goes into these events. It's not just simply turn up, get on stage and entertain. There's a lot of preparation that's put in that they don't normally see behind the scenes, which is this, getting the information, making sure people have understood that. So in a positive note, it's really helped build that relationship, working in partnership with human resources people, working in partnership with event organizers, and working together, because what we're ultimately trying to do is give a great experience to the participants. And sometimes that can be driven by fear, where we're all a little bit in distress trying to get it, or it can be driven by, what we're all at is about passion. It's about people. We want to connect with people. That's why we're in the event business. And we get back to that purpose of why we're doing this, because it's about people. We then get alignment, which then comes as part of team building. Well, we're all trying to achieve the same goal. We're all trying to give a great experience to the participants and set them up for success. And that was a bit of a challenge when we first transformed into virtual events. And that particularly came down to preparing teams before they went into it. So getting the information beforehand and opening up a conference platform 30 to 15 minutes before really does help eliminate those challenges that we did experience in the early days.
Very nice. All right. Well, it sounds to me, I mean, we could talk for ages, but we're going to run out of some time. So
I think so.
So, I mean, look, a key solution seems to be to solve the engagement challenge, you need the engagement solution, and the solution needs to be engaging. So if engagement is the number one challenge that you've faced with your events in the past, something engaging needs to be in there, and gamifying and having these immersive games that bring out introverts and extroverts and involves them, and to have a deep experience seems to be able to do that. We're going to go to Q&A in just a second, so pop in your questions to see if we've got some already. So while you're doing that, how do we connect? How's best to connect with the two of you? What's the best way to do that?
Hello.
It's up there on the, yeah.
Hello at catalystglobal.com. Or, of course, come and visit us on the booth. And I believe there's still one more slot left for our demo. So if you would like to come and visit and try out the Infinite Loop online for yourselves, then quickly make sure you get in there and get into that slot so you can try the demo.
Absolutely. And if you're a platform promoter, that you've got a tech platform that you run these events, I reckon go to the booth and have a chat with David or David. I mean, the great thing is you can just turn up and just go David, right? And you'll probably get it right. So if you'd like to engage with me or check me out at timwade.com, you can go and connect with me there or connect with the Catalyst guys as well. But let's go to the Q&A. Let's go to the Q&A now.
A sincere thank you to both David and Tim for an insightful discussion on how to perceive this engagement problem and assess the key factors contributing to the current disengagement, be it in virtual events, in workplaces, or in our daily lives. During the session, if you have any questions you wish to pose to the panelists, Tim, and the Davids, you may simply click on Programs in the main stage, followed by the Q&A button for this session, and you'll be redirected to the Pigeonhole Live link where you can pose your questions to the panelists directly. Alternatively, you may scan this QR code on the screen. As we have a packed schedule ahead of us today, we will only be able to handle several hand-picked questions from the audience. But no worries if your question is not picked. Our speaker and his team will still be able to answer the question in real time. Let's have the panelists back again.
Well, welcome to the Q&A. I hope you had enough time to not only take a photo of the QR code and submit a Q&A, but well, I guess trace it and color it in. So let's
I always love to do that.
thank you for still being here. So we're going to fly through these questions because we've got a little bit less than 15 minutes to do it. Hi, everybody who is tuned in for the Q&A. Here is the first question.
Okay, shoot.
And it's the highest voted question in here, and it's from Fern. Thank you, Fern. How do we get people bonded in person? How do when they finally meet again in person? How do we get them bonded in person after they've bonded virtually, or does it actually matter for the team to be bonded in person? An interesting question. This is from Fern.
Interesting. Well, I think when you're completely in a remote setting, it's so important to keep that connection going. It's harder than usual. As soon as you can get back to normal, then of course that's the great opportunity to step one further and do another event. But you're halfway there because you've managed to keep the relationships while you were spread apart.
That's true. I suppose it kind of depends if you've met them before or you've never met them before. If you've never met them before and you only bonded virtually and you finally meet them in real life, you might just have to be prepared that they're either shorter or taller than you thought. Yeah. But you've already built the bridge of connection, and from that, the relationship has an opportunity to grow. Okay, I'm going to throw over to David over there in Hong Kong. David, can you please explain what Catalyst Global is? And in particular, is it really global?
That's an awesome question. Thank you. Love it. Yes, absolutely. We can stand in front of it. It is completely global. It's run by a board of directors that are in different places over the world, and they have a membership of different licensees in different countries and territories all over the world. Asia Ability were in Catalyst Global before we joined, and there was quite a number of licensees at that time. So effectively, the board at Catalyst Global design activities, in a sense, they do the research and development, and then they license them to the licensees across the region. There are currently around 45 licensees globally, and they all have their license for their different territories. And we work very collaboratively together. We every year we have a Euro zone, we have an Asia zone that meet up, and then we have a global conference every 2 years. The last one we all attended was at South Africa. We have over 130 people, the directors of each of those companies. So the membership is made up of independent companies that have the access to all these fantastic products like Peak Performance, like the Infinite Loop, like Race Around the World. And we can all network and train with each other. It's quite challenging when you think about the industry we're in. Not a lot of team builders or event people always want to share ideas and talk to each other because we're all competitively fighting for the same business. But to have people in other territories that you can bounce ideas off of. I ran Infinite Loop for 100 people. Have you any advice you can help me with how I might make that more succinct in the debrief? Oh, well, I just ran it with 100 people talking to the partners in USA. So they've got territories, they've got USA, they've got Canada, they've got a lot in Europe, they've got the UK, they've got Ireland, we've got Pakistan, we've got Nepal, we've got a lot of Asia, and obviously ourselves there. We've got Hong Kong, China, and Asia Ability. We've got Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. There's Australia and New Zealand. So in a roundabout way, yes, it's fantastic. If you have a question that you want to ask one of the licensees about any of the products, because it's such a global organization, by the time you send that question in the afternoon, you'll have an answer from over all the other licensees by the next morning, because it goes all the way around the world. We're connected through so many channels.
Fantastic. So I guess the short answer is yes.
Yes.
So yes, it's global. But what's great about that is if you run a team building program, presumably in this part of the world, and you have offices in different parts of the world, and you'd like to replicate that or do it in different parts of the world in hybrid events, live events, or online, that's extremely possible. So
it becomes interesting, in fact, and we've done this a few times, where especially in the world of hybrid events, where you may have people connecting remotely, but they are on site in different locations. We can play upon that partnership that we have. We've done this already, for example, with our partners in New Zealand, where you have a company with a group on site in Singapore, a group on site in New Zealand. They can't, for travel restrictions, be flying in, but they're able to hold the same event. In fact, we did an infinite loop with groups on site running the event in each of the 2 locations,
Brilliant.
but connecting virtually between the offices.
So that's so that's a really good point. So that's really moving. That's what hybrid is going to look like in a way. So there's 2 types of hybrid. Level 1 hybrid is you've got groups of people live together, but in different locations with a screen in the middle. And then the other type of hybrid, I guess, is that you're hybridizing within the event itself, and so you've got a whole sort of complexity as well. So okay, so one of the questions is, what other games are there besides Rage Around the World? That's from KM. Rage Around the World. Presumably that's the one where you go around the world throwing things.
I think that should be one of our next events.
That's a great.
It's a slightly more angry version.
It could be sponsored by Rovio. It's an Angry Birds version. Rage Around the World. I suppose that's what happened in Egypt with the Sphinx losing its nose. What other games are there other than Race Around the World? Well, we did talk about Infinite Loop. The other side.
Side, David.
And Peak Performance. And there was another one.
We have
plenty more, but yeah.
We have blockbusters there. We have the Global Innovation Game. We have Chain Reaction Online. They're actually one of the advantages, I think, for David and myself, by being in the Catalyst network, is that everyone staring at the same situation of no live events, we've been able to work very fast to bring not just 1 or 2 events, but a lot of different activities. So people do have a choice. So we maybe have 10 to 15 different main remote team building activities to choose from there.
Okay. There's another question here is, what is the optimum time for a remote team building event for around 80 participants?
So the optimum duration, I guess that means. Of course, it always comes down to what's the objectives and what do you want to achieve, and also how does that fit into your bigger program. But for bearing in mind the challenge to keep people engaged and really in the moment and in the program, 90 minutes to 2 hours, I would say, is ideal. David, what do you think?
Yeah, we had a bit of skepticism with event organizers when we first started, because they were like, "Oh, can you really keep people engaged for 90 minutes?" And we've been overwhelmed with the experience and the feedback. And we're actually getting feedback saying, "Oh, we wish you had a little bit longer just to talk about the experience," because everybody does go into this with a bit of skepticism. It's becoming a little bit more normalized now. And when they've actually done it, like, "Oh, wow, I really did feel engaged. I want to try and share more about this," which is great feedback for us. So we are even more confident now expanding that past the 90 minutes. But we know for a good clean shot, 90 minutes is an awesome time to keep people engaged.
That's right. Actually, it comes down a lot to then being willing to invest the time in that, the review and the actual kind of takeaways afterwards, and that extends it.
So where would you put the team building? If let's say you're running a 5-day event, where would you put the team building game in that 5-day event, or the team building activity in that 5-day? Where would you recommend it goes?
First of all, it depends on what it is. A good way to kick it off is energizers. Day one, everybody might be a little bit awkward or coming with a lot of energy. It's good to get a good leveler to get everyone in the same field. So a good sort of 20 to 30 minute energizer is an awesome activity. We have one called Body Wrap, where we get people doing call and response. We can get that again with the haka, like the New Zealand All Blacks do beforehand. That's another great activity. I really like to twist things up and suggest you do the longer team building straight after lunch, because everyone says, "Oh, after lunch we're going to be tired of all the food in my stomach, it's digesting," and You see research on sleep studies saying the worst slot to get is after lunch. So we like to twist that up and say it's the best slot because our activities are so engaging that you are going to have to participate, and it will help you digest your lunch so you won't be falling asleep. So we really stand in front of this engagement piece. And because that can be the slowest time after lunch, that's the best time then to get people moving, get them involved in a team building activity so they can buy their way through it, have fun, and engage in that sense of purpose.
Yeah, it also sounds like earlier on in the event seems to make some sense, because if it's about engagement, you're setting the scene for the event. And if it's about connectability with others during the event, those breakout sessions or sessions where it's about communicating with people that you may not have met before, that team building activity gave them permission to play. But what about other times during the event? What would you recommend for if it's done on day one? What about the other days?
Well, of course, some of the activities, it's kind of nice to even break them up so you can have a theme running through. So the same activity can be picked up on day 2, day 3, and it has a continuity that runs through, and still keeps people kind of in that the playful mindset in those different times.
Yeah.
But actually, just going back to, I think that the benefit of doing it earlier, I'm just saying it's so much of the takeaway, so much of the value, actually the ROI of doing an event in the first place is how much you're shifting people in terms of how they interact for the rest of their event.
Yeah.
So if you're really making a difference to the level of engagement, participation, and involvement in all the rest of your sessions by inputting that activity, then you don't waste it to leave it towards the end, which is sometimes is in a mindset that it's a little treat after you've done all the hard work.
Yeah.
But actually, if you're going to get so much more out of that hard work by having something that increases people's involvement and engagement early on, it's worth doing that.
Very good idea. So how much does it cost to run one of these things? If I'm a client thinking I'd like to have you as part of my event, I guess it's the "it depends" answer. But as a rule of thumb,
I'd say as a rule of thumb, it works out usually about the same cost as having a speaker for that session.
So now we're directly competing.
Absolutely, I thought we'd get that in there for you.
I think we said, Tim, a sort of mid-range speaker, obviously you're premium, so instead of booking two...
Yeah, true.
Okay, so I guess the thing is, instead of getting 2 keynote speakers, you get 1 keynote speaker plus you get me and them. Or you get lots more speakers. But
a Tim and a David.
But at 90 minutes, that's 90 minutes to 2 hours. That's very reasonable, actually. And like you were saying, it's bringing people into the ROI. So we've got less than 2 minutes left, so I'm very conscious of that. I do want to return to that ROI question one more time. I want to see if there's any questions I've missed here. We did answer the optimum number, bonded in questions. Yep. Okay, great. So I think we've answered most of the questions in the Q&A chat. Going back to that ROI question then. So we need 90 minutes. It's about the price of a keynote speaker. And then we go back to that ROI about where do you see the biggest ROI for clients and organizers when virtual team building is added at part of a remote conference or a meeting? David, what would your sort of 3-word answer be, the biggest ROI of including it?
3 words?
I know, I had a 700-word question. I'm giving you 3 words to answer.
You want to make it memorable, of course. I mean, you can benchmark it against how many people have attended. The same with the company as a result of doing a team building program. Has the engagement in the company increased? Are you recruiting more people? Are you retraining more people? And is the employee performance going up? So there are many levels that you can quantify your return on investment. The simplest one is how many people have actually attended. Did they find it as a memorable experience?
Brilliant.
And the feedback that you're getting from that.
And I guess the final thing with 30 seconds to go.
I was going to say that was 3 words.
That was nicely done. But the final thing would be, I guess, is what is the purpose of your event? And your purpose of your event is not to tick a box to say we did an event, but it is to have the message get across to the audience. And to do that, they need to be engaged. And we've been talking about the engagement solution. My name is Tim Wade. I've been here with David Simpson and David Fotheringham from Catalyst Global. Please connect. We'll see you at the booth.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim and David, for a very fun session in discussing ideas on building stronger engagement in various occasions. Well, it has been a very meaningful and fruitful day's session. Let us grab a quick bite, and we will be back with more fascinating lineup where we can all discover more about collaborative event planning, delivering unique event experiences, syncing the online and offline of hybrid events, evolve technology in preparation of the return of physical events. Meanwhile, here are some videos for you to learn more about event and tech show, Evernev and Evernet.